Okay, Carole Rodoni.
Thank you. I'm talking to pause at the end because I'd like you to fill out something first, but I want to start talking a little bit about this economic update. I want to talk about the economy first. Too much, too soon, too fast. Are we in a recession? Do we ever get out of it? What's happening with Congress? Do we even have a Congress? Is there a government? Do we even have a government running anymore? What about Europe? What about what's happening around the world? And then I want to talk about real estate, and here's how I'm going to talk about real estate. I'm going to talk about new sales just came out today. You know, we're down again 2.7%. Prices are down basically 7.7%. Inventory is 6.6 months. Case Shiller came out a couple of weeks ago. Oh, we're down 2%, maybe up a little month over month, but if we go back to the peak, we're down 30%. We got 7 months of inventory, doom and gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom. And you know, at the end of the day, we are the oasis in the desert. And what I mean by that is, I understand what real estate looks like nationally. We get it. If you're in Fargo, North Dakota, if you're in Detroit, Michigan, it doesn't really matter because they don't even have a real estate market. But if you're in Saratoga, California, we're alive and well. And basically, there's an oasis always in the desert. You got to find that blue pool with the palm tree, because if you can't make it across the desert. And that is the San Francisco Bay Area. So we're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about real estate. Well, let me start with this economy, because this economy, guys, obviously is still fragile, and I think you know that. They came into this year and everybody said, oh, the recession's over, life is wonderful, we're going to have 5% growth, the economic numbers will be down to 7-8%, we're going to have this wonderful year. And it started out that way. It looked pretty good. January, February, the stock market was on a roll, we were up to 12,008, everything looked good. And then the first quarter came in and it was 1.9%, and they had to go back and readjust it, and it was only 0.5%. And then the second quarter came out, and they said, well, it's 1.2%. No, it's not. It's really 0.5%. And at the end of the day, they figured it out. I don't think we ever really got out of this recession, if you want to know the truth. I think it's a continuation of the one that started. It's been choppy. It's been longer. And I think what happened and why we thought we were out of it, everything that they did, all these short-term things, the stimulus, the 2 quantitative easings, cash for clunker, first-time home buyers, basically getting in the insurance business, saving the car companies, gave us short spurts of it feels better, it looks better, and that's what really happened. At the end of the day, I think the whole world is still in a bit of a recession. It's choppy. It's going to be a little bit dirty out there. Eventually, we'll get out of it, but we had some hurdles to heap. So let's talk about what's good and what's not good. First of all, let's talk about the stock market. Now, you know we've been on a roll there, and let me tell you exactly what's happening with the stock market. We were up to 12,008. We're now basically at 11,000 whatever. At the end of the day, you had this very choppy week, if you remember. We were up and down 500 points, and at the end of the day, everyone was panicked. And really, we were only down 1.1% because of the ups and downs. And that wasn't anybody investing in the market. It was all these day traders, people going in, going out, buying, selling, shorting, longing, doing options. And basically, they were playing the electronic trading that goes on in the stock exchange. So if we really go back now, where are we? Well, we're down now about 10, 12, 11%. So that is called a correction. At the end of the day, I think the stock market will probably be fine. It's steadied out a bit. I think you're going to have more days of up and down, depending what happens in Europe, depending what happens other places. But at the end of the day, I think the stock market will be a little bit positive this year. Not great, but we're probably going to hold our own, considering everything that's hit this economy this year. Now, oil, everybody said, oh, it's going to be $200 by the summer. It didn't happen. You know where it is. It's in the 80s. That's a good thing. I think it's going to stay there, so that's another positive sign. Now, what happened here that basically we're in the doldrums? Well, you know what happened here. We have a Congress that basically, look, it's just a bad marriage. We have to face sometimes that two people sit in a room and they just shouldn't be married and they shouldn't get along. I don't like Democrats. I don't like Republicans. I don't like anybody, because nobody's running the show. They're all short-term. Everybody's running for the camera. Nobody will stand up and do anything, and that's exactly what you're going to get out of this Congress. Absolutely nothing. Now, at the end of the day, maybe that's positive, because they seem to do more damage than good, and every time Mr. Bernanke opens his voice, every time the president makes a speech, the market goes down 300 points. So I think they should scotch tape all of them, and maybe they ought to just shut up. That would probably be a good thing. At the end of the day, let's talk about what they're trying to do and why it doesn't work. They're trying to spend their way out of this recession. We tried that. We spent $1 trillion, and it basically didn't work. It's hard to spend your way out of debt. Now the other side wants to basically save everything and take everything away, because that's the answer. Instead of meeting in the middle, maybe, and doing a little bit of both. So you know what happened now. The first thing that basically jump-started and jolted this economy for us this year was the debt. And basically, they were basically given a mandate. You know, we haven't had a budget in 18 months, but see, if you don't live on a budget, you don't need one. So we don't live on a budget in Washington, so I guess you don't really need one. At the end of the day, they came back in November. The mantra was pretty clear. Get back there, shape up, grow up. This is not a Montessori daycare center anymore, and basically hit this budget. Well, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, and at the end of the day, they did nothing. They raised the debt ceiling, basically $1 trillion. They took $1 trillion out of the budget, so we had a big fat zero. Now they have this wonderful commission. Oh great, that's really going to go well. We already had 2 commissions. They told them exactly what to do. They don't want to do that because it's hitting Medicare, Medi-Cal, and Social Security, which is the hardcore stuff. So this group has to come up with something by November. They're never going to do it, you know that. Then they have time out. That's going to be their punishment. So the punishment is if they don't do it, these automatic cuts come in. And that's going to be $1.5 trillion, and you know that's never going to work because it's out of defense and they're never going to do that. And the other is going to be out of Medicare. Oh, that's really going to work. So you call your doctor, see, and I say to the doctor, do you have insurance? Yes, I do. What is your insurance? Medicare. I'm not taking Medicare patients. Go down to your ER and make life be good to you. So you know at the end of the day, that's not going to work. So at the end of the day, they're going to push it all out to 2012. Nothing will happen. They'll do some kumbaya. They'll make it look like a great package. So then the president comes in and says, and I have a great package. Great, let's spend another $457 billion because the trillion wasn't enough. So we're going to get out there, let's spend some more money. Of course, we have to borrow it because we don't have it, but hey, what's a few borrowings among friends? So at the end of the day, he comes up with this great plan. Now look, the idea is you can't spend your way out. You probably can't basically take everything out. You probably need to a little bit of both, but at the end of the day, are we creating jobs? That's the key. Revenue is the key. Investment sounds good, but if you're not investing, it needs to be revenue. So he comes out with this great payroll deduction now. So you're all going to get a break next year. Isn't that nice? Basically 3.2%. And if you're an employer up to $5 million, you don't even have to pay any. So that's a one-time shot. It'll put some money in the economy. But do you actually think somebody's going to hire somebody after 1 year they're going back to payroll taxes? No. Infrastructure, $100 billion. Now let me tell you something about infrastructure. I agree with infrastructure. That would put people to work. That's a good thing. Let's redo the roads and the bridges. Except for one thing. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal. I would encourage you all to get on Google and read it. It's called Ruby Red Tape. It was in on August the 18th, and let me explain this story to you. This is why infrastructure in the United States of America doesn't work. Because we went crazy with rules and regulations. See, they were too loose, now they're too tight, and at the end of the day, nobody can get anything done in this country. So Ruby Red Tape is the story of a company that basically is doing natural gas across a pipeline in the New Mexico desert, 632 miles long. It took them 2 years to get a permit and $1 billion. So they're out $1 billion before they start. Once they started to dig, they had to hire 255 archaeologists to move with the people digging in the desert a pipe underground to make sure we weren't disturbing tarantulas and snakes and, God forbid, a stone that you shouldn't move. And they found plenty. So they had to change their plans 20 times. 10 times they found these artifacts. Somebody scratched a cross or something on a stupid stone. Oh my God, a sacred place. So now we got to call the Indians in. They have a ceremony to bless it all. And then from March basically to May, they had to stop production because a bird comes there, a grouse. They nest there. They have babies there. And they had to hire 44 environmentalists to make sure for 6 weeks we didn't disturb the birds. At the end of the day, it cost them $2 billion more to build this pipeline. Now, at the end of the day, what's remarkable in this article was that basically the president said, what was remarkable is that this is not remarkable. This happens every day, every time you do something. Now look, we want to save the planet. I agree with that. We want to keep everything beautiful. But this is a pipeline across a desert, underground. I mean, at the end of the day, this is ridiculous. So great, the $100 billion in infrastructure, forget it. At the end of the day, that's it. Then he's going to do, you know what else? He's going to do something for the states. He's going to do this, that, whatever. And then he comes out with how he's going to pay for it. Well, we have to tax everybody. You know that. So let me talk about the billionaire's tax first. I'm so pissed at Warren Buffett. I want to tell you something. He used to be my hero. He's a piece of shit now. That's all I can tell you. Let me tell you why he's a piece of shit. I think Warren Buffett, you know what happens to people that make a lot of money? I figured it out. They all become billionaires, and then when they're 82 and it's close to dying, they get what I call guilt remorse because they all screwed everybody to make their money. That's exactly what happened. And I'm sorry I'm not using nice words, but I don't give a shit anymore. I don't care anymore. I just don't care. My age, if you don't like it, lump it. I never liked you. I didn't like you. I don't like you now, so forget it. At the end of the day, let me tell you why I'm mad at him. First of all, he has spent his whole life avoiding taxes. You know that. He has all kinds of lawsuits against the IRS for taxes. That's number one. Mr. Buffett gets all of his money from dividends, and dividends at Berkshire Hathaway are taxed before he gets them, and then he pays taxes again. So he's paying 47% taxes. Don't let him think it's 17. And you know that little secretary he has that works for him? She pays payroll taxes, and if he thinks she's being overtaxed, why doesn't he pay her damn tax bill, and then she wouldn't have to pay any taxes? Why can't he be generous? He set up a foundation, which means he'll never pay any inheritance tax, but here's my biggest reason why I'm really pissed at him. I have something called the Bank of America stock. Now, Bank of America was in my family when it was Bank of Italy, so you can know how long my family's had it. It is now worth less than it was when it was Bank of Italy, so you can imagine how much money I've lost. At the same time, I kept it because it always paid a decent dividend, all right? Now, it hasn't paid a dividend for 3 years because it owes money to the government, and the government will not allow it to give a dividend to shareholders. Fine, the government gets paid first. Mr. Buffett, if you remember, just loaned $5 billion to the Bank of America. Oh, but he got a sweetheart deal. He's getting 6% dividend on that $5 billion, whether I get a dividend or not, because he's guaranteed a dividend, and the United States government allowed him to do that. At the same time, oh gee, because it's a corporation that loaned to a corporation the $5 billion, 70% of those dividends are tax-free. Now do you understand why I'm pissed at Mr. Buffett? Because I'm getting SHIT, and he gets 6% and it's 70% tax-free, and he stands up and says, I should pay more taxes. Let him send more. Nobody said he didn't have to. So that's that. The other thing is going to affect you, and that's anybody making over $250,000. And you know what the mandate is now. They want to cap the mortgage deduction. They want to do that at 28%. They want to tax the charitable deduction at 28%. And I'm sure you've all heard of the 2013 rule. It's in the health care bill that's going to add a 3.3% real estate tax to any dividend investment, any investment property that you buy, sell, or transfer, anything above $250,000. That's where the majority of this money is going to come. So they're hitting everybody. Now let me just tell you the joke about that. First of all, when you look at people that make over $1 million in the United States of America, they're $22,000. So you could tax them till you die, and it's never going to help. You got to get down to $75,000 in order to make those numbers work. That's number one. Number two is, at the end of the day, it isn't going to work because you can't basically tax these people. They're paying already 24 to 28%, and at the end of the day, it doesn't work. So the good thing probably is none of this will come true, so that's a good thing. So let me talk now a little bit about something else that basically is unemployment. Look, it's a structural thing. It has nothing to do with just going out there and hiring people. I think that number is going to stay up there probably till 2014, 2015. You're lucky that we live in Silicon Valley. Of all the jobs created the last 2 months, half of them have been in Silicon Valley. So the rest of the world may be suffering. We're not suffering as much here. There's an economic revolution going on in Silicon Valley. They're looking from everybody from Sunday. They're hiring people left and right. They're going up to the city and getting as much space as they can. They're building campus environments. So thanks God we live here, because Silicon Valley is alive and well. So at the end of the day, I think you're going to see that number. We still have a bit of unemployment, but we're going to do better. Now, at the end of the day, let me talk a little bit about what the biggest problem we have is, and it's called Europe, and let me tell you why. Europe is an interesting place. See, we could solve our problem. Nobody wants to do it. We are one currency, 50 states, we guarantee our T-bills, we can default on our money, the dollar goes down in value, we don't like it, but we can pay for our debt. And when S&P downgraded us, it had nothing to do with paying our debt, because we can just keep basically printing money, and they do it every night down in the T-bill. You know, in the Treasury, those Xerox machines, honey, they loaned them all free, fair Xerox, and we just keep printing those dollars. At the end of the day, when you're Europe, it's different. 27 countries, of which 17 all share a common currency. Now see, when you've got 17 people sitting at the table, it makes a big difference, because 2 people can't get along in life. So imagine having 17 people, and you got socialists, and then you got some that are monarchies, you got some that are democracies, some are in debt, some are not debt, some went to the Charlie Sheen party and blew it all, some didn't and were very austere, the rich ones don't want to support the poor ones, gee, we've heard that before, and at the end of the day, it's a mess. So at the end of the day, here's the problem. You got the pigs, right? You got Portugal, you got Italy, you got Ireland, you got Spain, and you got Greece. Look, Greece is broke. I don't care what they tell you. They're going to default. They did default. They'll never pay their debt back. They've had this budget. Now this guy comes out again, this poor prime minister, they're going to kill him. And he comes up with another thing. It doesn't matter. You can raise income tax 100% in Greece. Nobody pays income tax. It's all black market money. They basically put up the tolls. You know what they do in Greece? They run through the tolls. And if a guy stands out there in the center, they'll run him over and kill him. They don't care. Now they said they're going to put a tax on their utility bills. They're all pulling out the wires. They don't care. Don't you get it? No matter what you do, you're not going to get money from Greece. They don't have any. Then you've got Italy, Mr. Berlusconi. Oh, wonderful. This is the guy with the 17-year-old that's running around, right? Of course, he didn't do anything with her, but he gave her $300,000 and he tried to change the date on her birth certificate because she was only 17 and she needed to be 18. This guy's had more facelifts than Nancy Pelosi, but in the meantime, you know what they're worried about in Italy. All of these women are running after him. They're going to kill him. These menopausal women who are mad that he's running around with a 17-year-old, so they can't even decide what the hell they want to do. And then you got Spain and Portugal and you got Ireland and you got the whole wad of of them out there. And at the end of the day, over here is Mr. Sarkozy and Anna Merkel from Germany, right? We're going to be tough. Be tough, forget it. There isn't enough money in the fund you set up to basically save 7 countries. So here's where they are now. The European Common Bank has come in. They're buying all the bonds because nobody else will buy them. So at the end of the day, they're trying to buy all the crap out there from all these countries, but there isn't enough money in the UCB to do it. It's against their charter to buy more than they have. Back and forth, back and forth. They all meet. Everybody sits down. It's lovely. Here's the problem. Let me just tell you. They're trying to get a second bailout to Greece, and they can't get it approved. Here's why. Anna Merkel goes back to Germany. She loses every local election. They've now told her she can add to the fund, but she needs parliamentary approval to do that. You know how long that's going to take? At the end of the day, Mr. Sarkozy goes back to France. He's going to need approval to do that too. Finland says, no, we're not loaning money to Greece unless they put up assets. If they had assets, they wouldn't need a loan. Don't you get it? They're broke. At the end of the day, Slovenia, which is in there at the end, says, look, we're not giving Greece anything. Screw them. Let them go under. So at the end of the day, nobody can agree to give them that. They're out of money October 1. They haven't okayed the fund. What they need to do is something called Eurobonds. Now, let me tell you what Eurobonds are. See, that's like our T-bills, because a Eurobond would be, okay, Greece, you need money. We're going to loan you money, but everybody in the European Common Union is going to back it. So it's a guaranteed bond. That's exactly what you need. But they don't want to do that, and in order to do that, they'd have to change their constitution, and 17 countries have to go through the voting process in their parliaments to do that. So you can know how fast they're all going to get those bucks. So that is basically taking the euro from 150 down to 130. You don't want to buy the euro. Don't do that. And basically, at the end of the day, it's very precarious over there. It's up and down. They're probably going into, or could drive us into, another recession. So at the end of the day, they have to solve it. They don't want to do it. They keep wanting to kick the can. Now, we go to Japan. Obviously, here's the problem with Japan for us. It was a supply problem. That's getting better because the country was 40% down in power, but they were the second biggest buyer of our yen. Remember that. So now they can't sit at the table to fund our debt. We're borrowing 50 cents of every dollar that we spend today. So at the end of the day, we need a big player. So who's left? The Chinese. They're looking at our T-bill at 1.7%, and they're basically saying, yeah, we're going to buy it, but we're not real happy about it at the end of the day. So then you've got that. The Middle East, all I'm going to say is it's a mess. You know that. We don't know who was there. We don't know who's coming. Nobody knows where they're going. NATO decides they're going to do the no-fly zone again for 90 days. It was supposed to be a 3-day exercise. It's costing $300,000 or $300 million a week. At the end of the day, they went in there to save everybody in basically Libya. Nobody even knew where Libya was, all right? Now, they were not going to kill Gaddafi. How can you not kill him? He's killing his own people. He's not leaving. If you don't get rid of him, he's going to continue to fight. So at the end of the day, 2% of the world's oil, we don't buy any. It all goes to China. So we're borrowing money to pay for the no-fly zone because we're 40% of NATO, run by an American general, so we can save the world, so then we can turn around and pay back the Chinese with interest for oil that they basically need. Perfect. That's how it works. We get in, we don't know how to get out. That's the problem. So at the end of the day, that's a mess, and I'm glad I don't have to solve that problem. So at the end of the day, look, we're like a big ship. It's global. Everybody's on there. You've got these basic countries like us and England and Germany and France. We're slow-moving. We can't jumpstart fast enough. You've got Europe in basically turmoil. You've got Japan trying to restructure themselves. You've got the BRICS, which are Brazil, Russia, India, and China. They're moving too fast, and you've heard that they're trying to slow down their economies, which means that the world has all slowed down now. So I think there's a new normal out there. It's called probably less growth, and we just have to try to get used to it. And it's a real change, and it's basically causing some havoc out there. So that's sort of the whole picture. Now let me talk about the state of California, because we are magical out here. You do know that. We're all nuts. We know that. Basically, if you go to the heartland, they don't even understand who and what we are. They think we're all mental cases. We like it here because we're entrepreneurial, we are creative. We do like that cowboy mentality. We kind of shoot from our hips, and we like that. We like to live on the edge. They don't like that. You know, they're still stuck in 1922, but that's fine. Let them stay there. At the end of the day, remember we had this budget deficit, $25 billion, if you remember. Magically, it went to 16. Those guys weren't going to get paid up in the assembly. Boy, did they put a budget through in one night. The governor basically vetoed it. It was a crap budget. Good for him. He's 72. He doesn't give a rat's ass. He's not running again. His dog's running basically the Capitol. Good for the dog. The dog knows better when it puts the paw print down. At the end of the day, everything magically went away. Silicon Valley is going to take us out of this recession. For the state of California, we will do what California always does. We blow the wad. We overspend. We then basically say to Silicon Valley when we're in trouble, wake up, hurry up, we need some bucks. They do something wonderful, and magically the state comes through. So I guess we should be lucky we live here, because I think at the end of the day it'll probably be just fine.